Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Tablas Creek Wednesday Instagram Live conversation. I'm Jason Haas, as always. My guest this week is going to be Stacy Briscoe, who I think is one of the most interesting and exciting newish voices in wine writing. And I'm interested to talk to her about how she got here, how this was a piece of how you get to be a wine writer in this day and age. But as I usually do while we're waiting for people to join, I'm going to share some pictures. So just give you a sense of what things look like out in the vineyard right now. One kind of overview shot first, just to, because I feel like it gives a really good sense of the just kind of where we are in the season. This is looking through our Counoise block. You can see there's still some California poppies. You can see the grasses kind of turning gold. But we're getting towards the end of the green season and the beginning of the gold season. So a couple other pictures. A view from the top of the vineyard, a long view, same thing. We're at the process of turning that cover crop under, or in an effort that I think is super cool, turning it into food for our flock of sheep. So if you take a look, you can see a bale, kind of a circular bale of cover crop hay here in the front right-hand part of the screen. This is our own cover crop that we've been cutting and baling and storing. You can see us driving a wagon load of it down to one of our greenhouses to store. So this is going to be what we feed the sheep when there's no more grazing for them out in the pastures. A few other pictures. I want to show you some pictures of flowering, because that's kind of what we're in the middle of right now. In order from least advanced to most, this is Mourvedre. So you can see the flower clusters are formed, but they're pretty small still, and we're not imminently flowering. Compare that to Counoise, where you can see there's a few little flowers there and sticking out, but most of it still hasn't flowered. And compare that to Grenache, which is in full flower. I feel like Grenache always tries to steal the show whenever you do a comparative demonstration. And then two more, just again for contrast's sake, one of Syrah, which is almost as advanced as Grenache, though the clusters are a different shape. You can see the more kind of conical clusters compared to the big wedge-shaped, or the rather more cylindrical compared to the big kind of cone-shaped clusters of Grenache. And then finally, Viognier, which is at the point where you can actually see some little berries. Flowering is largely done with Viognier. We've had good flowering conditions. We're grateful for it. And that's what we're going to be looking at over the next 3 weeks or so. Grapevines aren't the only things that are flowering. This is a photo of our olive trees. They are in full bloom right now. One last thing. Just in case you think the job of a winemaker is glorious, this is a picture of Neil Collins, our winemaker forever, digging an irrigation trench with a backhoe. We're going to be replanting some new Mourvedre vines up in an old block that we pulled out a couple of years ago just because it had gotten weaker and weaker. And so this is part of that work. So again, lest you think it's glamorous. Okay, I am going to stop sharing. I'm going to invite Stacy to join me. There she is. So I'm sending. And as you can see, it is beautiful here in Paso Robles. Hey, Stacy.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. It's massively windy here, so if you can't hear me, let me know, and I'll put on some headphones. But
It sounds fine. I can't hear the wind, at least from here.
Okay. If I blow away, that's what it is.
Right. If you actually lose contact with the ground, we'll know what happened.
Yeah.
Cool. So you're up in Sonoma, yes?
Yes. I am in Sonoma, right near the downtown plaza area.
Lovely. So the way I always like to start is just ask people how they got into the world of wine. So what was your journey?
How long is your show? to start from the very beginning, I used to be a personal trainer. And if any of my former clients are watching, what did you eat today? No. Um, so I did that for many years, and but I studied English literature as a student, and I always wanted to be a journalist and an editor, and I decided to jump back into it via what I thought was going to be like food writing. And so that's why I actually started I have a personal blog where I write about wine mostly, but I started out writing about food. But because I started incorporating wine into my blog, I was actually able to get my first job was at the SF Chronicle, writing about wine, editing pieces about wine. And so that was a contract position that lasted about a year, but that basically is what jump started my career. Because after that, I went to the Wine Writers Symposium, which I believe this year was online. I had to miss it, but and I was able to get into that, and from there, I made so many connections and was able to kind of get my first staff writing jobs, and now I'm back freelancing for like a bunch of publications. So yeah, it's kind of been a twisty, windy road, but it just always leads back to wine. And I guess it's, people always say like write what you know, but I think, with wine, like there's so much to know. For me, it's more like write about what you want to discover.
Yeah.
And with every assignment, I get to learn something new. I get to talk to somebody who's doing something different or discovering something different, and learn through them. So that's why I'm here.
Super cool. Was wine like when you were growing up? Was wine on the table at dinner on a regular basis?
No. So my parents do not drink anything at all, ever. And the first time I ever had a glass of wine, I remember this. This is a horrible story. I was in college. I was probably 19 years old, and a housemate of mine just came back from studying abroad in Italy, and he brought back this wine, and he was like, this I went to this winery, I tasted this wine, and it's wonderful, and I want to share with all you girls. And we're like, okay, great. And so he pours us all this wine, and my roommate at the time too, she wasn't a drinker. The only thing we would have are like super sugary margaritas like once in a blue moon. And so I sip it, I crinkle my nose, I push it away, and he's like, what's wrong? You don't like it? And I'm like, no, I don't like it. And I just assumed I didn't like wine. So I didn't drink wine after that until maybe after college, when my boyfriend at the time was like, oh, you'll like this Lambrusco. And it was some kind of like sugary, bubbly thing. And I was like, okay, I can get into that. And to be honest, once I kind of discovered there were things that were maybe a little bit lighter and brighter, I know a lot of people make fun of like, the whites and Findels and things like that, but to those brands credits and those wines credits, I mean, that's how people get into wine, and you go from white zin to oh other things. So yeah.
So what's the first wine that you remember saying like, wow, this is really interesting? Not just this tastes good, but what was sort of the first wine that like sparked wanting to
Yeah,
discover more?
I definitely have one of those. And if my husband's somewhere and he can hear this story, I've told it like 1,000 times. Because so by the time I met my husband, I was already into wine more than just whites and Pinot and things like that. And so food pairing, like, even while we were dating and stuff, we would cook together and try to like, pick out a wine that would go with dinner. And so it was I want to say it was like a Valentine's Day or something. We went out to this restaurant. This was when we were living in Cupertino, which is in the South Bay of San Francisco. And I don't know how we chose this wine. I probably we asked the sommelier like, hey, we really like Pinot Noir. Like, what do you recommend given the food that we're having? And so what we had was a bottle of Pinot Noir from Patricia Green Cellars in Oregon. And I want to say it was like a 2010 vintage at the time. But the thing was, it was the first time I tasted a wine where I tasted not just the fruits, but the non-fruits. It was like it had levels to it. It had depth to it. And I smelled it and I sipped it, and I probably disturbed the whole restaurant because I was like, flowers. I smell flowers. I smell flowers. I never smelled anything that wasn't like, yeah, I smell grape, I smell red, like,
Yeah.
all the, you can name all the fruits, but there's other stuff in there, it's amazing.
That's such a cool story. And I think that's one of the things maybe that, one of the ways at least that Oregon maybe that distinguishes itself a little bit from at least a lot of what people taste in California, where you can really, there's so much sun that the fruit is almost always front and center in wines from California. And I know we spend more time working to make sure we build in the non-fruit elements, the minerality and the spice and the savory elements and the floral elements than we do worrying about fruit. The opposite is true in Europe, where you got all that other stuff and you're trying to get as much sun as you can to get the fruit elements in. And Oregon is sort of in the middle there, where it's got, I mean, it's got fruit elements, but the savory elements are, I think, what really makes a lot of those wines so interesting.
For sure. And I mean, also, as you know, it also depends on winemaking style, and I'm sure at that point I was still drinking a majority of wines that are probably, like, for lack of a better term, like mass produced, and they're trying to appeal to a large audience. But then you get someone who is paying a little bit more attention to, not, I want to please everybody, but more, I want to respect the fruit. I want to produce a wine that's expressive of the fruit and the terroir. You're going to get less of the, winemaker's touch and more of the environmental influence in what you taste. And I think that has to be the first time I ever experienced that in my life.
Yeah, it is. That's a super cool, it's a kind of origin story. I love it. So when you started at the Chronicle, were you at that point kind of given assignments as to what to write about, or were you at that point already having to figure out, like, to develop and research your own pieces and come up with the ideas from scratch?
It was a little bit of column A and column B. When I very first started there, I actually wasn't writing. In fact, I made it a point. I said, I am not a writer, I am an editor. And so I was actually reading winery reviews and doing the editing thing. The specific project I was working on, though, there was some kind of like background technical things that were kind of like holding it off. And so it was actually the travel editor at the time had said, hey, if you've got some time, I understand you also write about wine. Would you like to write for the travel section? And so she would tell me, what area needed to be covered, where to go, basically. And then I would do, these short little wine travel pieces. So I started in that area. My first piece was Amador. And so I visited several places in Amador County, and I wrote a little, like, hey, here's the history of Amador, and here are, like, the top, like, 5 little places to visit and wines to try and things like that. And after that, I did Clarksburg, I did Lake County, I did a few things in San Jose, so it was kind of, like I said, it was kind of like, here's the, like, general topic, but then it was kind of up to me to, whittle down what it is to write about. And then when I finished up the Chronicle, I was more, I was kind of doing what I was doing now, more like freelance. And when you're freelance, it depends on the publication. Some editors really do have a hard editorial calendar, and they know exactly, like, okay, in September, right, we're going to celebrate harvest, so we need a harvest story, and we haven't covered X region in a while, right, kind of thing. But other places are, like, hey, like, pitch us your stories, pitch us your ideas, like, what do you know, who do you know, what's hot and happening. So it really depends on who you're working for and what their style guide is, I guess.
And how do you go about coming up with story ideas? What's your Yeah. Do you have a system or?
Um, I don't know. I guess I never really thought about it. I guess um I mean, I think one thing that I do, for maybe other people that are like looking for story ideas is just like stay on top of the news is the other thing. So I spent about 2 years working for Wine Business Monthly. I started as the staff writer back when it was Wines and Vines, and then moved on to the associate editor position. And doing that, we're very much on top of like news
Yeah.
all the time. And so when I left that position, it just became a habit to me. It's like every day you read the news, and by news I don't just mean like what are other people already covering, but like press releases, press announcements. I look at winery blogs all the time. I subscribe to your blog, so I know what's going on in Tablas like every day. And I think that's the thing is knowing people and being curious about what they're doing. And a lot of times that'll spark an idea. And probably a lot of writers don't want to say this, but I'll say it. Like some press like PR companies, they really are helpful, because sometimes the winery itself maybe doesn't have a blog, maybe they don't have a good social media presence or whatever, and they'll send you a little blurb about something. And maybe the newest release isn't what you want to cover, or maybe that specific thing isn't what you want to cover, but sometimes it sparks ideas in your head.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, I read about another winery that was doing something similar. Maybe I could write a piece about folks who are doing that. So I just try to, I'm a people person, so I communicate with as many people as I can, and you just never know when an idea is going to come and spark you. So.
And I love that you share kind of your picks of the most interesting stuff that you're reading on your own site. I mean, that's one of the things that I read regularly, just to make sure that I haven't missed cool stuff, because I try to stay up on what's going on with other wineries and in the world of wine, but I don't have the bandwidth that you do to do this, and having you curate that is I think a really cool resource.
Yeah, definitely. So like if there's anybody listening, once a week we'll post what the like kind of just articles that I've read or blog posts that I've read, and even press releases that I receive as a writer that I think are interesting for people to read. And honestly, I actually make that my morning routine, is to update that, and it goes out every Saturday morning. And having that kind of like responsibility, if you will, makes it so that, okay, yes, I'm going to check the news, I'm going to check the blogs, I'm going to check Twitter or whatever it is that I'm using to get the information. So yeah, it holds me accountable to stay up to date, because if I don't know what's going on, like what am I going to do? No one's going to tell me if I don't look. So
Cool. So where all can people read your work now? I mean, there's a bunch of different stuff. I know I probably have read something that you've written on at least like 4 or 5 different sites in the last month. So
yeah, I know. I've been telling people, I'm like, if it seems like I'm everywhere, it's because I am. So I most regularly have been contributing to it's really windy. Wine Enthusiast. And so I have a couple pieces that have gone live this week. So Wine Enthusiast, I had a couple pieces go out for $7.50 daily. And I just recently started writing for my my wine school, the Napa Valley Wine Academy. What's up, guys? They have a blog called The Pouring Points. And what I really love about that is those are more kind of education, like 101 pieces. So I just had a piece go out on biodynamics, just kind of breaking down what that means. I used a vineyard here in Napa kind of as a talking point for how it works in real life. I have another one coming out that is I thought was kind of cool, is Oregon versus Burgundy, like why they're different. they're not the same just because they're relatively close on the latitudinal range. So, things like that maybe other students are wondering about, or, curious about, and things like that. I was fortunate enough to write for Tim Atkins as well. He has a blog. If you're not following, you definitely should. The pieces up there are really insightful, and as a writer, fun to write, because he encourages you to put your emotion and your opinion into it, as well as the facts. So that was really fun. Oh my goodness. So many places. I also help with some event coordination for Wine Industry Network. So there's the sales symposium is coming up later this month on the WIN website. So I'll be moderating a session there, and I help produce some content and organize some of the events for them as well. Oh geez. I feel like there's more, because right before I came down here, I was working on a couple of projects. So I, keep an eye out. Like I said, if you, it's hard not to find me. I'm out there. I'm Googleable. I'm social mediaable. You can ping me. I'm everywhere.
Awesome. So how much has the way that you've worked changed because of the pandemic?
Oh, a lot. Quite a lot, actually. So as I mentioned, I was working at Wine Business Monthly, and they, because of the pandemic, had to let a lot of us go. And that's why I shifted over to becoming a freelancer. And so that drastically changed what I was
Right.
doing. I was not working on assignment anymore. I was not being told what to do. I, had to go out and basically fend for myself. But I'm so grateful to all the editors who were very receptive of, taking on a new writer on board. I work with great editors. I wouldn't work with these publications if I didn't have good people behind me to, put writers are, and I can say this as an editor too, writers are great, but really it's the editors behind us that push us, to go that extra mile. So I have to give props to all the editors out there. And working from home is not something that I have ever had to do in my life before. And so, I mean, luckily, we have a gorgeous house here in Sonoma. I have an office space, which is nice. But yeah, not being in person for a vineyard tour, not being in person. I do a lot of technical reviews, where I walk with people in the vineyard and
Yeah.
in the cellar, and they walk me through their grape growing and winemaking process. And to have to do that virtually, I mean, if I have to give props to other people, it's going to be the winemakers and the grape growers who are able to do that, because it's hard. It's hard to do it from a distance, and like I said before, I'm a people person, so to not be able to be there in person and kind of feel the emotion that's coming through with these people, it does take that a bit away. But I would say, I think a lot of people would say is one of the advantages, is that I am able to connect with people who are far away. So I've been doing tastings with Italian producers and French producers, and I'm like, wow, I never got to do this before. Even just someone down in Santa Barbara, say, that's many hours drive for me. I'd have to get a hotel and all of that. And being able to do that in real time and not have to worry about accommodations, that does take some pressure off. So, I think it's the same thing that a lot of people are dealing with. But I honestly, I can't complain. I love what I do, and it doesn't really, if you love what you do, you find a way to do it, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think that's super interesting for people to hear, because I think the assumption might be that, oh, you're a writer, you can work from wherever. Like, how different could it be working from home? But that's the thing, particularly about wine writing, is that it's not generally a particularly solitary pursuit. It's something that you're doing or at least you're doing the research for, on site at vineyards with winemakers or with importers or distributors or at trade shows, or I mean, a lot of the opportunities that you would normally have in a normal world to discover new things and just kind of rub shoulders with new people haven't really been happening for the last 15 months.
Yeah. And it's like I said, I'm a learner too. Like I feel like one of the reasons that I enjoy this job so much is because I can constantly learn from people, and I'm a tactile learner, so if somebody tells me like, oh, our grapes are flowering, and they show me a picture of it, I'm like, okay, awesome, your grapes are flowering. But if they can show me like, hey, my grapes are flowering, and I can actually see what that means. I mean, I can't tell you how long I went, not actually understanding what it meant for a grape to flower. I mean, I get it now, but like, unless you see it and understand the process of the grapevine cycle, it's just like, you got to make that connection.
Yeah.
And same thing with winemaking. I mean, you can read the process in your textbook as many times as you want, but until somebody lifts the lid off of a fermenter and says, hey, do you hear that? It talks to you. Like, I just, yeah.
So have you gotten a chance now that we're sort of hopefully at the tail end of at least the you got to be at home part of this pandemic? Like, have you got a chance to get out to wineries yet?
Yes. So I'm so blessed. I've got both my shots. Pfizer, what's that? um, and I've been on 2 vineyard tours, which is great. And one of them was at Contessa, which I just wrote about. And the other one was at Cornell, which I've actually written about Cornell Vineyards in a couple of different pieces, just because there's so much going on over there. And yeah, and I've booked a couple more, and I'm still getting invitations and still accepting virtual events as well, because I understand there's a lot of folks that are still not comfortable doing live events, and I'm proceeding with caution too. I'm for now, outside vineyard tours, one-on-ones, small media groups are awesome. I don't know if I'm ready for a full-on like symposium trade show, like sweaty bodies next to each other. I don't know if I'm ready for that, but yeah, I'm really excited to be getting invitations and actually feeling comfortable accepting tours and tastings and, like I said, small group events. And I'm looking forward to going back to the normal, not the new normal, the normal.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a shock for all of us as we, because we've gotten so used to like seeing other people with a certain amount of suspicion,
Yeah.
Like, how is it going to feel being around 1,000 people at a big tasting? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I think it'll happen little by little. We'll get used to the idea bit by bit.
Yeah, and the other thing too is I've always grown up with my family's a family of huggers and touchers, and I was taught, ever since I was a kid, you look somebody in the eye, you shake their hand, and I'm like, is that still going to be okay? Like, are you allowed to shake hands, or are we all like, like I don't know. So I'm going to have to learn like what's appropriate to be in public again.
Yeah. 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 As we all are. So what's next for you? Do you have things that you have coming up or that you're excited to dive into or work on that's different from what you've been doing?
Different than what I've been doing.
Or not necessarily different, but whatever, building on what you've been doing.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I've got quite a few projects going on. I've got a couple of pieces that are going to actually be in the print edition of Wine Enthusiast, which I'm always excited about because I do so much for their online, but it's another thing to like see it in print, and you're like, look, I wrote that. You can actually give it to your mommy and daddy and go, look at what I did. So I've got a couple of those coming up. Oh, and like I mentioned, the wine industry sales symposium. If you guys are interested in that, I'm moderating a session, and that's on the Wine Industry Network website.
And
Yeah, and
that was what you and I recorded something for that last year, right?
yeah, we did the Vineyard Symposium.
Okay.
Yeah, and oh, and sorry, no, that was your grape grower,
Yeah,
um,
Jordy.
Jordy. Yes, thank you. And then we did a regenerative like talk. I think you and I for that as well. Yeah, they I've been doing some just kind of like video interviews for them as well, to kind of help boost that. And let's see what else. Yeah, I'm the kind of person that I'm always looking for new projects, and I'm always jumping into new projects. So like that's why I think, like I said, I kind of am everywhere. I enjoy having multiple things going on and keeping myself busy, and like I said, just always kind of learning more. So
Cool. Okay. I can't believe it has actually been a half an hour, but it has already been a
oh
half an hour. Um, but how, if people want to read what you have written or connect with you, how do they do it? What's your website? What are your social media handles? How do people connect with you?
yeah, so I'm here on Instagram, obviously, at Stacy. It's Stacy with a Y too, Stacy, Lou, Lou Briscoe. That's my last name. Stacy Lou Briscoe is for Instagram, and then on Twitter, it's my initials, so SL and then Briscoe. That's on Twitter. And I'm actually in the Clubhouse too. I don't really know how you find people there, but if you're in Clubhouse and you want to like Clubhouse with me, I'm part of a lot of like wine study groups. I'm also studying for my diploma through the Wine and Spirits Education Trust. So that's another project I have going on. And then, yeah, I have my personal website, which, like a bad tattoo, like I said, I thought I was going to be writing about food. So it's called Briscoe, which is my last name, and then Bites, BITES.com, BriscoeBites.com. And I try to post what I write as well. I'm a little bit backlogged right now, but you can search for me. You can Google me. My stuff will come up. Yeah, and my website has like a contact sheet. So if you are someone that wants to connect, personally or professionally, just shoot me a little note. It goes to me. There's not a weird robot in the background that answers the emails. It's really, really just me. Yeah, I think that's it. Are there any other social media things that I do? I don't remember.
Those are the. I think
I
those are the
think
ones
those are
that
the main
those
ones.
are the ones
I'm
that
on
people
I'm on
probably want to find
Facebook,
you.
but I feel like Facebook is more like personal. So maybe not the Facebook. Oh, and I'm on LinkedIn. If anybody, I do post my stuff up on LinkedIn. If anybody likes to do that, I don't know how popular that is. I know it's more popular in other countries and stuff. So
Right. Awesome. Well, that's probably enough. That's what 4 or 5 different ways that people can find you, which is only appropriate because when we posted that that you were going to be the guest on this conversation today, I had several people reply on Twitter. Oh man, I see Stacy everywhere. Like so, that's good. It's really exciting. It's exciting. I feel like sometimes the world of wine writing, it moves very slowly. There aren't a lot of new voices. It's often kind of the same voices you might have seen 10, 15, 20 years ago. And I feel like your voice is a really welcome addition to what there is out there. So thanks for everything you do, and thanks for coming to chat with me this afternoon.
Oh, thank you. This was fun, and thank you to everybody who joined us. I see some really nice words in the comments. So cheers, guys. I'm so happy to see everybody.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, so thanks everybody who joined. We will be back as always in 2 weeks. My guest is going to be sommelier and writer and event organizer Bonnie Graves, who you can find at Girl Meets Grape if you want to do a little research ahead of time. So anyway, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you again, Stacy, and thanks everybody who's stuck with us.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.